I want to say hi to everybody. Thanks for joining us today. I have Frank Fanelli. Did I pronounce your last name right? I never say that out loud.
Yeah, absolutely.
He's joining me today to talk about tour budgets. But first, well, let's just dive into, you had a busy weekend.
Yeah, to say the absolute least. So I don't know if anybody in here was a part of the last thing that I involved myself in with Jen. I think what was that one?
No, that was for my class.
Oh, that's completely separate.
That was a whole different thing.
Holy crap! So these are 24 brand new people. Okay, cool. Let's get that
like
the whole
world. This is the whole world population now. Like, this is a public thing. That was for my Columbia college class. So
good. I'm talking to everybody on the planet now. That's fantastic. Okay.
Yeah.
So, so my name's Frank. I've been touring for 14 years. I am a touring crew member for the most part, and for the past 10 weeks, give or take, I've been running a fundraiser for crew members who are out of work called For the Nomads, and the website is forthenomads.org. I'm sure Jen will type it into the chat right this second.
I will.
On command. So forthenomads.org is basically a donation platform, originally at least, to give back to the crew members who are out of work in the music industry. And that's just like myself, with a lot of my peers and everything. So what we did just this past weekend, for the past 9 weeks or so, we've been raising donations for that. We raised $44,000 worth of donations. And this past weekend, thank you. This past weekend, we launched something that my partner Tatiana and I have been working on for around a month. We've been working on it behind the scenes. We launched a silent auction this past Friday afternoon that has dozens and dozens of artists from all over the world in different genres and entertainers, some wrestlers, some adult film stars, just entertainers in general. Got them all together, and they're donating their exclusive items for auction on our website. And when I tell you that this is the busiest weekend I've ever had when I wasn't on tour, and I'm in my 30s now, so just imagine how many weekends I've seen. This is probably one of the busiest weekends I've ever had. We had nearly 20,000 hits on the site, which the is doing well regardless, but just in 3 days. Yeah, just in 3 days to get somebody, or to get 20,000 people off Facebook and Twitter and Instagram and YouTube is like a massive thing. So we had 20,000 hits on the site just in the past 3 days. We did $21,000 worth of top bids, and that's just top bids. That doesn't count the other 700 bids that we got on the website itself. It's been unbelievable, and we're just a 2-person team. So it's like, Jen asked me to do this today, and when she originally asked me, we weren't sure how this was going to go. So I'm glad I can still do this. Is basically what I'm trying to say.
Maybe we would have picked a different day if we
I might have would have picked a different day, but I'm happy to help Jen at any cost. This isn't taken away from anything. My partner's dealing with the website right now and updating bids and all that shit, and we're getting a bunch of new artists on board. So if anybody here actually tours for a living and works for specific artists who maybe want to get involved with our auction, or if you just want to donate or buy something off the site, it all goes back to that initial, we're taking all the money that's raised and giving it back to the crew members who actually need it. So if you have proof that you tour for a living, and there's a whole set of guidelines on the website, if you have proof of that and you want to hit us up because you either need help or you want to get the artists that you work for involved, or you yourself want to get involved to help spread the word, whatever the situation is, we're on For the Nomads for literally all the socials there are: Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. God, what else is there? YouTube, all of it. For the Nomads and forthenomads.org. Yeah. So if you want to hit us up.
People can donate stuff for the auction. They can donate money for the Nomads, and they could donate a few seconds of their time to like, share, follow, and help spread the word.
That's what I've been doing for 10 weeks now. But for this weekend, it's absolutely been the busiest weekend possibly of my life. So it's been fun.
And so segueing that into, one of the reasons I love to have you on and talk to people is you have done such a variety of different stuff and been involved in different aspects of the industry and done some very entrepreneurial things. So can you give us like the brief synopsis of how you got here.
So it started when I was in second grade. No, like I said, I've been touring for 14 years. I was originally a band member. I sang for a metal band called The World We Knew, and we were from Long Island, New York. I'm from New York. The hat. I was in that band for 9 years. We toured all over the world. We released records on 3 different labels. We had a countless amounts of managers, agents, you name it, release records, whatever. So I did that. But prior to that, how I even got kind of into the workings of shows and tour managing and et cetera. I worked for like the leading promoter on Long Island for like underground metal and hardcore shows. And he did a couple of the other genres as well, but mostly like the heavier music side. So I worked for him first. I worked the door. I helped with the catering. I set up the band's green rooms if we even had them, because a lot of them were just shitty, like like VFW halls and whatnot. But I did everything from the ground up to learn a little bit. And then when I joined the band, I kind of would be able to walk into a venue, whether it was in my hometown or not, or somewhere around the world that we were playing, and just kind of pick out pieces that were terrible and then tried to fix them. Whether I was the headlining band or not, if we were on a small tour, there was no real tour manager anyway, so I would take the reins. So after the band broke up in 2013, even before we broke up, I kind of got offers to work for other bands, because the bands that I was friends with and we would take on tour kind of just saw my ability to fix a scenario on the road. And I also booked a lot of those tours as well, because I figured if I can't trust the booking agents that I was working with prior, hell, I could probably do a better job. And a whole lot of things happened to where I became a booking agent. I was a tour manager, merchandiser, lighting, production manager, VIP coordinator. I run a clothing company, you name it. I mean, and now I guess I run a charity organization. I've done a lot, and that's the quick batch of information.
You have what I think is one of the most important qualities in our industry, which is figure it outness. And you summed it up really well when you said, like, I can walk in and see what the shittiest part is and make it better. That's figure it outness, to be able to identify the problem and then figure out a solution to the problem. And I think that is should be inspiration for everybody in whatever they're doing, to be able to look at something and figure out how to do it and how to do it better than it's currently being done sometimes. So that is kind of why I wanted you to come on. I think you're a great example of like all of those things. And at some point you figured out how to do tour budgets. So who are some of the artists that you've been on tour? Like when we talk about this today, we're not going to be talking about any one specific artist. So nobody should have takeaways of like, oh, this person needed this or whatever, but just kind of an idea of the types of artists that you've tour managed.
Oh man, I should have brought up a list. All those things behind me are tour passes. I should honestly just turn around. I'll just do a recent, Black Veil Brides, Andy, the singer of Black Veil Brides, his solo project, Andy Black, Muir, oh good Lord, Oceano, Chelsea Grin, For All Those Sleeping.
And we met because
I forget, honestly.
You were on the Warp Tour, and I think that you did what a lot of the good tour managers that are tour managing bands on the Warp Tour, I see them on, at the beginning of their careers, they kind of for about 4 or 5 years, they're working with larger bands on larger stages and kind of growing and moving on to bigger things in their careers. And I think that happened.
Actually, yeah, thinking about that, CKY and We the Kings are in there as well. When I met you, I was with, I don't know what stage we were on, whatever, but we were on one of the smaller stages. In 2014, it was For All Those Sleeping. And then every year past that, I think I was on the main stage or just in a better position from what we were doing prior.
Whenever we saw you around the production office, you were always like helpful and pleasant and just a joy to have around. So
that's good to hear.
Being here today. So let's talk about a band has gotten their tour is booked by the agent. things are all kind of like lined up on that, like getting it routed front. And at some point they go, well, we need a tour manager. Let's bring on Frank. What are kind of some of the first things as a tour is starting to come together on your end as a tour manager that you're thinking about, and what questions are you asking? What sort of information are you trying to get so that you can start putting some numbers together?
I think the most important part is I need to know how needy this artist is. That's a very, very important part. Because if because if they want 2 buses because they don't want to be near anybody but the band members, and then the crew needs to be in a separate bus, that's a huge expense. That's something like that. So that's just one example, of course. But I just need to know how.
Understanding your artist's needs.
Yes.
Whatever they might be.
Yeah, and there's no wrong answer to that. They're the one who employs you, and they're the one who wants. It's their money essentially. You just have to try to guide them in a way to where they continue to make money. But keep them happy. That's the major part. I think my first thing is understanding your artist. I've sat down on a very first day of a tour without ever meeting this person and having major conversations with them other than just talking to the manager or whatever, and just sat down and I need to know you. Like, I want to get to know you so I know exactly what you want from me, and hopefully you won't hate me by the end of this first day, that kind of thing. And then there's times where I'll obviously have a phone conversation with an artist 2 months prior so we can build our relationship, and I know what kind of person they are and how I'm going to be treated and how I can treat the situation in general while I'm on the road with you. So that's number one. Understanding your artist is very, very important in needing, or to figure out how needy they are and what they want before you start spending their money. Excuse me. Sorry. And secondly, I'll always ask the agents, it's a very important question. How much money are we making? You need to know what we're making so you can kind of understand what you're able to spend. You know what I mean? What you're able to spend. Those are 2 of my very first conversation openers, basically.
So with the agent, are they getting into giving you limits on things, or are you does that kind of rest on you a little bit? Like, they tell you, here are the guarantees we're getting every night, here's our potential back end. Are they telling you like what they're expecting merchandise wise or VIP package wise? Are they giving you any constraints on what you have to work with money wise?
The agent doesn't give a shit. The agent
they book the tour, they're getting their 10%.
Yeah,
they're getting the show.
They're getting their
manager.
Yeah, the manager
sure has an opinion.
Yeah, the managers for sure. The agent doesn't give a shit. As long as if one of the artists is making $20,000 a night, he goes, well, cool, I'm making my $2,000 a night, whatever, and that fluctuates however throughout their agency. But yeah, so
on behalf of agents, I want to just say that they care. It doesn't directly affect what they are doing.
Yeah, sorry. The question that you laid to me, they don't care how we spend our money, because if they're doing their job to present the money to the artist in a form of, you play this show, this is the money you're making.
Right, and they're very focused on the revenue side.
Yeah, so they've done their job, and then spend the money. Well, it's not my problem anymore, which is fine because it's not their problem. But yeah, it's absolutely, once I find out how much money we're going to be making for a tour, it's basically, this is the sum that you're working with. If it's $100,000 hypothetically for an entire tour, that's what you're going to make, probably, at least in guarantees alone, because you don't know what the back ends are going to be and whatnot. I will always ask the VIP team what previous VIP numbers are going to look like. I don't even know if I factor that into the thing that I sent over to you. I'm not exactly sure. Oh, because we didn't have VIP on that tour, I don't believe. Right. It doesn't matter. Either way, the merchandise sales, I will factor in with the artists that I gave to you in the spreadsheet that I use. We don't touch that because the artist has a different contract with the company where they got a big, I don't want to call it a settlement. They got a big payout. Advanced. Why couldn't I think of that? Yes. They got a big, whenever the contract was built and signed and whatever, to where they'll always get a huge thing of merch at the beginning of a tour because they have a general idea of what they're going to sell throughout the tour. And then our merch guy, I never see the money ever. I never ask. I almost don't even care.
Okay, so those details we will get in down the road about a month from now when we do up on merchandise.
Yeah.
But so good to know.
You can call me back for that one too.
We're really looking at you're really looking at the show guarantees because that's the revenue that you can really rely on.
Yeah, the budget itself is never going to be 100% correct because there's always going to be things in there that happen that you don't account for ever. So there are things in the spreadsheet that I make or that I work with that I think I don't even remember the exact number off the top of my head, but I always put like a good $5 to $10 grand of just who knows what's going to happen money.
Yep.
You know what I mean? And
the budget should have like a 10% contingency.
Yeah,
conservative amount for the bus broke down in the middle of the night and we had to figure out how to whatever, or it got stuck in the mud and we had to call a thing to get it pulled out of the mud, which I've been involved in that happening a lot of outdoor shows. There's always things that come up, so having some cushion in there so those things aren't surprises is certainly important.
Yeah, it's just I don't even know how to say it. Yeah, it's basically just the way I break it down is I just need to know how much money we're going to be making. That's very, very important. And then, like I said earlier, understanding who you're working with and the restrictions that they're going to give you or not give you. That's how you're going to have to figure out how to spend it. But most artists are going to want to know exactly what kind of bus they're going to be getting before they get them. So I'll pitch them a whole bunch of ideas, and that's how I grow that part of the budget.
So you kind of, you get information from them and then you present them options and then different people care about different stuff. So, maybe, I know everybody cares about their bus though. So whether or not it has a shower or how many bunks are in it, and is there a star room in the back, like stuff like that, everybody's going to have a different opinion on. So the big expenses are going to be those transportation costs. And I would assume salary is, and who you're bringing on tour. How involved do you get in who's coming on the tour for the crew?
If it was up to me, I would just bring a team with me. But that's just not how it works most of the time. But that if I'm the new guy, I'll ask who they have and what their budgets usually are, and kind of have to gauge it from there. If they're one of those crews that aren't willing to work with what we're about to, if I'm working for an artist that no longer is the headliner for that specific tour, and maybe they're one of three or whatever, they're obviously making a substantially less amount of money. So how do you want, because me being the new guy, I have to go, well, okay, you're going to be making less money here. Are you willing to part with any of the crew that you already have if that's something that you want to do? And if not, then you're just going to make less money, and that's not, I can't do anything about that. But I will always give my starting rate or whatever for what I'm asked to do. And if it's just tour managing, then, I'll give them X amount of dollars. And then if it's myself, because I TM and do lights if I'm doing just the two. I don't do front of house. I have really bad ears. So I don't do sound is what I'm saying. So I'll offer up my TM lighting position. I'll offer up my TM lighting VIP position, depending on how big the artist is and how much work they are, things of that nature. And then obviously you're always going to need a sound guy for the most part. Sound guy, a merchandise guy, maybe a monitor guy, production manager, depending on how big the stage setup is, things like that. It can easily go up to 5, 6, 7 different crew members. So everybody's going to have to get paid.
So let's say it's a 4 or 5 piece band that's touring clubs that are in the, kind of 1,500-ish capacity range.
Sure.
Who do you typically see on a crew for something that size?
Just like I said, absolutely. It's mostly TM front of house. It's kind of how I see it, but I take part in being half of that. So TM LD or TM front of house, then throw the other one in there, whether it be sound engineer or lighting. So those are two right off the bat. Usually 2 people needed for those 3 jobs. Merchandise, so that's 3. Some kind of stage guy, whether it's monitors or stage manager or whatever, or a tech, in that kind of capacity of a venue, and especially if they're doing very well as a headliner or whatever, no question that
There's like setting up the drums and tuning.
Yeah, at least there's at least 2 techs there for just equipment. For just whether it's one guy that handles all guitars, anything with strings on it, at least one, bare minimum. Then you'll have your, so 1, 2, 3. Oh no, that'd be 3, and then so add another 2 on top of that. So that's tech, drum tech, string tech, whatever. That's 5 right there. And then some people really are particular about their ears, because a lot of bands use in-ear monitors, obviously. So they want a complete monitor guy, mostly solely to that. So what I try to do is I'll try to get a monitor guy / production manager or stage manager in general, just kind of keep an eye on everything that's going on while I'm in my office, working on whatever I'm working on. So I try to keep it to 6 if they're okay with it. And if they don't have any techs and they're all hired guns besides for maybe the singer or whatever, then you can cut down a couple of people. Yeah.
So you could fit all of those people on one bus.
Absolutely.
I could see where you might end up, depending on who the artist is, with 2 buses, where you've got a band bus and a crew bus. And certainly, like, when artists get bigger, everybody, if there's more money, you can have more space. What kind of stuff are you bringing along? Most places that you would be playing would have a sound system in-house. So are you bringing a lighting package? Does this all travel in a trailer? I mean, it's not big enough that there's going to be a whole semi-truck, I wouldn't think. Like, what vendors are you hiring to
So
rent?
just for reference of my most recent batch of things that we were doing, I've recently bought out a couple of small lighting packages, because we were doing mostly festival kind of play. So small, and we didn't bring those with me, but that's why for the festivals, but that's why we brought it small. So when we did do the clubs in and out of the festivals, we would at least have something to come along. But what made it more interesting, and I mentioned this to you the last time we spoke, what made it more interesting was we had a projector that projected video onto a black backdrop. That looked really old, like really vintage in a way, and very like old school film, even though it wasn't. It just looked that way. We took all the color out of everything. It just looked really cool. So the small package of lights didn't matter so much, because I was also using the lighting at every venue that we're in. Because when you're in a 1,000 cap venue or a 1,500 cap venue, they usually have some pretty good stuff to work with. So yeah, we'll go in with a couple of cases of lights, small package, not a whole lot of movers or trusses and things like that. But I'll use one lighting company, and if I can keep it to one lighting company, I'll do that instead of having to branch out to a couple of different things. One lighting company, and most of the time I'll try to hire my friends that have their own soundboard that they want to use and bring with them, or a monitor guy who has his own board with him as well. And that's my try. If not, then that's one more company that I have to go through, just some kind of sound company, and then work through that. And that all also depends on what they want to use, what kind of companies they want to use, as far as like what kind of soundboards they're comfortable with and things of that nature, or what the artist wants to sound like, I guess, if we're coming on with a new batch of a new team in general. It all factors in with the cost.
Okay. I'm trying to think, those are kind of the, without looking at a spreadsheet, those I think are the big picture decisions that are probably being made up front before you're really digging into how many days are you on tour, how many miles you're driving, and plugging that stuff in.
And what kind of show they want to have. Do you need pyro? Do you need confetti every night? That's all.
How do you feel about confetti?
How do I feel about it?
As a thing, have you been on tour with an artist that uses confetti?
Not every night, thank God.
Well, it's funny, when I did the show expenses workshop with Sean O'Connell from Live Nation Denver, we were talking about confetti. So there's there's usually an additional cleanup charge, and a lot of times artists don't realize that.
Yeah, I had, it's funny, the last time I was in the UK, the first show, I forget what venue it was, but it's a big old venue. The manager even flew out for it. I guess the artist, it was their first time back in the UK in a while, and it was sold out, and it was a big venue. It was great, whatever. The last time they were there, and this was told to me, the last time they were there, they had CO2, and they had confetti, and they had everything. And the vendor that I wanted to use for this, that they've used in the past, pulled out from me less than like in 24 hours or whatever, right beforehand. And manager shows up, and then we're like, I didn't find out until like we were already in the UK, but like we landed, we like went to sleep, and I found out, and he shows up at the hotel to greet us and say, so everything ready for tomorrow? I'm like, So that was my most recent confetti that didn't happen. I was very happy that I didn't have to deal with it. We saved a bunch of money though.
Yeah, I mean, confetti ends up being expensive for everybody on all ends, I think, as fun as it is. Okay, so Lisa Brownlee, who was the tour manager for Warp Tour.
Oh, shit, Lisa's in here?
Hi, Lisa. Okay, so we're going to take a look at your tour budget workbook, which is funnily enough in numbers for anybody that watched the spreadsheet workshop. It is my least preferred spreadsheet for platform, but no shade. I'm happy that you said something. Would you rather you screen share and pull it up and walk through, or you wanted me to pull it up and navigate?
You can pull it up, because I have no idea what I'm doing in that form. You've done way more of these than I have, so you can control it.
Okay, so for the viewers at home, I'm pulling up Frank's spreadsheet workbook, and I have seen this for about 30 seconds prior to showing it to all of you. So we'll kind of like walk through that and talk about kind of the different parts of it, and then I'll show you the tour budget spreadsheet that I teach my class, and we'll kind of take a look at that. So I'm going to go on screen share. We should still both be visible.
Yeah, I apologize in advance for anybody who's like joining, so where like you didn't hear the first part of my rant. I've been unbelievably busy the past weekend for the fundraiser thing that I'm doing, and I literally just took out a ton of information from this 15 minutes to starting and sent it over to Jen. So it's not her fault. I'm sorry. I've been slammed, and she's just seeing this kind of, haven't looked at it since when we did the tour. Hopefully it's cool. I don't know. But hey, that's what's fun about this.
We're both figuring it out at the same time.
It'll be fun.
Okay, so this will be fun. All right, so I can tell that on numbers, which apparently I do have on my computer, because it opened. I actually think that I downloaded it. Like at one point, my Excel it wasn't supported, so I was like, "Fine, I'll get the free numbers." And so that's why I have numbers. All right, so
let me go on that real quick. I told Jen prior to this, I had one made for me like forever ago, and I've just used the same one forever. So this is what it is. Sue me.
So, Anonymous Band is going on tour in the summer, and I can see up at the top, because we're looking in numbers, the tabs are up at the top. So there's a budget tab, an income tab, payroll, cash flow, PD, which stands for per diems, hotels, airfare, personnel, and some other stuff that we'll get to. So we are at the sheet that is the first sheet on the workbook. So I assume that that's where we kind of want to start. And it looks like you've got this arranged for money coming in and money going out. So do you want to just maybe talk about some of the things that you see on here, and where some of these kind of numbers came from? So
I'm going to start by saying I don't use all of this sheet. I use mainly the budget. Like I said, I haven't looked at this in a couple months. Budget, obviously, because it's it's like the master of everything. I'll absolutely use maybe the payroll. Yeah, definitely the payroll. And I think maybe the income. I might only use 3 of these because.
Well, this is a lot, depends on who are you sending this information into.
Yeah. So I'm basically.
They're going to want things in a particular way, and you might need to use the format.
Yeah. If that goes back to who you're working for and who wants what. In this specific case, they literally just want to see where everything is kind of going with the money that we're about to make. It's very bare bones with this. So that's why I only use the 3 tabs or give or take. Everything else, like the hotels and the personnel and I'll probably use just Master Tour, and then I'll put everybody on it.
I was going to ask you about that. Can you tell people what Master Tour is for those that don't know? I've never used it myself, so you would actually explain this much better than me.
You've never used Master Tour?
I don't tour and manage that.
No, that's fine. I didn't hear you correctly.
Yes, I have never used Master Tour myself.
Okay, cool. So Master Tour is basically an app, a program, a website, a company, whatever, that pretty much put together a tour book on an app that's specifically made for touring. That's the easiest way I kind of can lay it out for you. There's a lot of tours that still do physical touring books that has all the information for every venue and every promoter and every address and every hotel and things like that. But in my estimation, I never liked using those because the information changes so frequently all the time, just for different things happening. Maybe somebody got fired, so that's no longer my day-ish-go contact at that venue on 3 weeks into the tour, things like that. So this app called Master Tour and the company called Master Tour, basically you pay X amount of dollars a month to be a person that is the tour manager, and then you can literally put out every bit of information and update it gradually as it's happening in the app. And you send out the invite for your tour to everybody that is on the tour, or everybody in the management team that wants to see what we're doing exactly to the T when it comes to the schedule, the press, you name it, the bus calls, everything, just everything you can think of that goes into making the show. I'll put most of my information on Master Tour. But when it comes to the budget, I'll do that here. And then once I know what we're working with, then I'll put it here kind of bare bones. And then like I said, with this specific artist, that's how they want it. We'll look at Master Tour for all the bullshit that matters on the tour itself. For the budget, we'll give this to the manager, to the business team, and this is how they wanted it. Just pretty couple of different things here and there. See who's making money, where it's going, whatever.
Cool. Okay, so I see on the ends you've got guarantees and other revenue that would be coming in. I like to see that you put like the easy to see agent fees, which are a percentage, right up front. Payroll related stuff. It looks like you have rehearsal expenses, salaries for the musicians, salaries for the rest of the crew. So per diems, I don't think that we've talked about per diems on this workshop series yet. Can you explain per diems for us, for those that don't know? Or do you want me to?
PDs are basically just like I mean, maybe you have a different example. I just call it my living money. It's how, not how I survive on the road. Of course, we get buyouts and things like that. Maybe we have to explain what that is too. But I look at it as just it's money that I would use for my food weekly. That's kind of what it is. So we'll agree on your quote unquote food money in my brain for what you get paid usually for the week, as just kind of like an added bonus if there's shitty catering venue or venue catering or whatever, things of that nature. How would you explain it?
So that's pretty, I would say pretty accurate, especially in the way you're thinking about it is accurate. So per diem is money that is intended to cover your travel expenses that you incur when you are working away from home. So that in the normal world would be, taxis or Ubers, and we just have less of that in our world. And then there's designated amounts that are reasonable for different markets. So nowadays, per diems are typically taxed in the same way that salary is, but when you go to do your taxes, you can write off per diems based on what city you were in on each particular day. So like the per diem for Chicago is going to be different than the per diem for Albuquerque because there's a higher cost of living. So they say like, you're working away from home, we would expect that you would spend more money on a day in Chicago than a day somewhere else. So anyway, it has kind of evolved over time. I am not a perfect expert on it.
Yeah, that's funny. I've never actually had to explain what that is before. I just always looked at it as like, oh yeah, that's the money I spend on food.
Right. So it used to be when our industry was really super DIY in beginning, per diems were received in cash in advance of the days that they were for. And typically it was a cash amount that you would receive for each day that you were away from home on the tour. At some point there were some changes, and now you see everything under the sun. So you see it included in your pay. You see the options of being able to take it in cash, but you're still getting withheld taxes on it through your pay. You see it for every day that you're on tour. Some tours that don't have a lot of money are doing it only for off days because they know that there's catering at the shows for show days. I've heard of everything from $10 a day for off days only to $100 every single day. And a lot of it really depends on what's the artist's budget and what can be afforded. I think it should be tied a lot to, especially if we're thinking about days off, tie it to what kind of accommodations are you putting your people in on their days off. If you're putting them in a fancy hotel where, you should let them lay in bed and do nothing all day and order room service. If that's the kind of accommodations you're putting them in, your per diem should be able to cover like getting food in those accommodations. If you are staying at a Super 8 next to a McDonald's, your per diem could be more in line with that, right? On Warped Tour, it was $35 a day for all of the days for the production crew, which seems kind of standard. So.
On this particular tour, just to give a thought on it, we always did the artist preferred that we did it just this whenever we started. Let's just say the first show was on a Friday, that was PD day. So we if we started rehearsals the week prior, if it's still a Friday or whatever the day it is that we started on, that's when we start the PDs. So we always just keep it on that day. We do it in cash. And then I would ask when I know I needed the cash, because if you remember from my earlier conversation, I don't touch merch money at all. So there's not an influx of cash going on. I always try to get a check, or I try to get the promoter to wire the money to the agency or whatever, the guarantees. So there's not a whole lot of times where I'm trying to just hold a ton of money. So in that kind of case, when I know we're coming up on a PD day, if I don't have the cash, or all my cash is tied up in float with the bus driver or things like that, I'll ask a promoter several days in advance, if I can, to put aside X amount of dollars for the guarantee that I'd be probably getting in a check or et cetera. And then I would take it in cash instead. And then I'd be able to pay out my PDs for my whole crew and band members for the week.
So when we looked at our settlement sheet in the previous workshop where we had some deductions, one of the deductions might be a cash where you take a portion of it in cash. So that's where that would fit in there. Somebody is asking what is the buy on? So what we actually said was buy out, which is you rather than a promoter providing a catering spread of a buffet that is a meal, they might buy out the catering by giving you money to give to your crew and they all go get their own food.
Not to off, I do know what he's talking about. We did say buyout, but up further in the spreadsheet, it does say buy on. And what it means by that is there are certain instances where you can go up. It's further up. In certain instances, a management team or a label or whatnot will kind of give money to the cause, to the band, to the headliner, or to the team, whatever you want to call it.
They're buying a spot on the tour for a support act.
I was trying to say it not in that kind of way, but yes, they're essentially, yeah, you're right. There's no reason to beat around the bush. They're giving X amount of dollars, whatever is agreed upon, to make sure that this band, whatever they are, and whatever spot they're in, gets on the tour. And it's not all the time, but it's on there because it does happen. And that money adds up in the budget.
And whether or not that's advisable is not for us to decide here on this on this workshop. Okay, so let's see. So we talked about PDs so per diems are almost always abbreviated PD. That's how I knew what that was. All right, so bus lease, mileage, bus driver salary.
So yeah, with that, so I left all that blank because for whatever reason, I think we just got it was easier to put it in that way. It was like, this is the lump sum. I did all the math on it in the contract that we got for that specific bus company. It was easier just to put, okay, this is exactly what we're spending for all 3 or 4 of those things. That's it. That's the lump sum. Mm-hmm. So that's why I didn't fill out all those. But that number, I'm pointing at it like you can see me pointing at the exact number. That number, the bus lease, yes, exactly. That number is a mix of whatever the bus cost, what the trailer was with it, the mileage charge, the bus driver salary, and everything in between. That was all the lump sum for that specific tour.
So different vendors are going to price out their services in different ways. And I know a lot of times bus companies and I know truck companies will lump it all together, and they will have taken the tour routing. They have run all their numbers on their end, and they come up with a per day cost, which is the average per day cost over the course of the whole tour. Others are going to more itemize out, here's the rental fee, here's the bus driver wages, here are the other things that go along with it. So some of that is kind of vendor specific on. Yeah,
it's like this goes back to asking what your artist wants in a bus per se. And they're going to, like, I'll hit up a couple of different companies in wherever I feel is the best place to get said bus. Because there's a ton of them in Nashville. There's a ton of them in LA. There's some in Phoenix. There's some in Florida. There's some in Vegas. There's bus companies all over the place. So depending on where we are, I'll stick to maybe 2 or 3 companies, get some contracts or some estimates from them for how long the tour is and what we want out of a specific bus. And then, just like you said, every contract's different. Everything's breakdown different, and that specifically, the one that I have on this sheet, is the lump sum of whatever it is we took from that company.
So one interesting thing on the bus front that people should just be aware of if they're ever hiring a bus company for the first time is you actually pay for the bus from its home, wherever its home is. You pay for it to get to the tour, and then after the tour, you pay for it to get back home. And sometimes it's calculated a little bit differently, but it's depending on the distance, you account for how many days should it take for that driver to drive. And at the end of the tour, we figure out the fuel cost and estimate that fuel cost that we know that the bus driver would need. So the bus needs to, in theory, leave its house full of gas and return home full of gas.
Yeah. Just like a rental car.
Yes, that's a good way to think about it.
Yeah.
And I've had, a lot of times buses are though going from one tour to another tour. So we come up with the hypothetical of if it were going to its actual home and then maybe it actually goes somewhere else, but usually the structure of what the tour is to pay for, you work that out with the bus company of an understanding of where's the bus coming from and where's it going. And that can factor in significantly if the bus is coming from Florida and the tour is starting in Seattle. It's a long ways.
Yeah, yeah.
On work tour, we had buses coming from all over the place. A lot of it is just like, where are they when you need them, you know? Okay, so we've talked about buses. You have hotel buyouts. So typically we would figure, well, talk to me about what do you see as far as hotel rooms? I know some tours, everybody has their own room. Some tours, there's roommates, people share. What are your common experiences with hotels?
I put the word buyout in there as a rough estimate of what I'm willing to pay each night for X amount of hotel rooms. So I'm not physically giving a buyout to anybody to get their own room. That's just kind of the general, hotels on there. For whatever reason, my budget buyout is on there. But that's the general, I'm never actually giving somebody, let's just say hypothetically, $100 and go, here, go find your own shit. I'm spending the time, especially for off days, I'm spending the time researching the areas. Is there bus parking? Is there anything close by that's going to entertain us for the day? Is this the worst place on the planet and I just have to go here because it costs us way less than doing an overdrive? Things like that. I'm always looking for what it is, and then goes back to understanding your artist. I know I'm going to say that a lot today, but you need to find out what they want as well. Do you want, of course, the big name or whoever it is, or just the band members in general, will always more times than not get their own rooms. And then, are you okay if all the crew members get their own rooms? Do we have the budget to do that? And if we don't, then suck it up or don't do the tour, because when I'm talking about the crew members, because unfortunately we can't afford it, we're going to link you up 2 people to a room, and so be it. It just is what it is. But the bus drivers will always get their own room because they have our lives in their hands. You want to make sure that they absolutely get the best sleep that they possibly can. And if they do not, then who knows if you will see the next morning.
So one time we actually do have hotel buyouts is for truck drivers. So truck drivers that are driving like a semi basically have an apartment with them. There's not usually running water, but there's a bed and a table and bunks and a refrigerator. And so truck drivers, those sleeper cabs, they are typically living in that. So we give them on off days, we give them a hotel buyout, and they can have the option of then choosing to go stay in a hotel if they want, which I don't think any of them ever do because they're driving around with an apartment. But they can do whatever. So that's the only time that I've seen that, like, we are like, here, go find your own hotel. But for the rest of the tour, the hotel is booked for them.
Just to add a funny tiff, there's a Q&A in here that, can you see that? Just out of curiosity.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. We don't have to touch on that now, but it's something, now that we're on the topic of the drivers and the hotels and whatnot, I did a tour a couple of years ago where the very first interaction I had within the first 24 to 48 hours of being with this driver that I had, he basically told me that he wasn't going to go to the hotels that I booked, even though they were fine. Like, I would never put anybody into a shithole. And I would just say,
bus driver or truck driver?
My bus driver.
Okay.
And I remember just being like, so you're telling me you're not going to go to the place that I already booked for you? He goes, nah, I'm just going to get my own, but I'm going to need that. I'm going to need that money though. And I was like, you can go fuck yourself. Yeah. That was a fun tour, to say the least.
I don't know that I have ever had a bus driver refuse the hotel booked for them That's an interesting one.
It was what's funny is I got him fired off the tour. Eventually, it wasn't right then because I'll hear anybody out. I'll go to whatever. But he left. He absolutely left. He was a nightmare. And then I didn't see him for a while. And then the very first day of that summer's Warped Tour, he comes strolling in the catering, and I was like, oh no.
Such a small world. Such a small world.
I was very upset. Anyway, sorry, that was just a small rant.
That's fine. Bus Wi-Fi. I remember when that used to be a big deal. It's probably less of a big deal now because everybody has cell phones that have internet on it. But oh my God, on Warped Tour at some point we're like, shut off that Wi-Fi. So expensive. I mean, it adds up, right? And everybody's just like streaming Netflix. Like, I understand if you have a legitimate work reason that you need it. But anyway, so buses will have sometimes some add-ons that are optional, like the Wi-Fi, much like a rental car where you can add on insurance or a child's car seat or whatever at a per day cost. You can add on Wi-Fi or a trailer, or I feel like there's something else in bus world that's a daily add-on that I can't think of what it is, but oh, satellite. I should look at the next thing on the sheet. Satellite, yes. That usually stays on. People like to watch the TV. Yes. And trailer, all right, DOT fees. Hey, have you know that they've gone to electronic log devices now, where anybody who's driving a commercial vehicle has basically a thing that is attached to either the vehicle or their key that will only allow them to drive a certain number of hours before they are required to stop and take a break. Has this affected your life at all? Absolutely,
at least once or twice, yes. Not so much as when I was tour managing, though. We kind of just figured it out, because I think it was just transferring over, like that was starting to become a thing. The last time because I didn't get to do any of my tour managing jobs this year. They were all done. They were all gone. I was on par to do literally the next 4 or 5 months as a tour manager. And for the first 2 months, for January and February, I just did merch. So late last year, it wasn't really, I guess it was rolling in, or maybe it wasn't. It just didn't affect
trucks more than buses, but I don't know that for a fact.
There's a few times where we did have to fly in. I did an arena tour with Logic and JID, and we had to fly in drivers at least 2 or 3 times throughout that tour.
A second driver will come in so that the first driver drives their I think that I should look at the we talked about this on another workshop, but drives their allotted amount of time, and then a second driver would come in and be able to drive the rest of the way to wherever they need to get to. So we call those double drivers.
Yeah, at least he just chipped in. We did have to get somebody for the UK also. That was added as well on my last UK tour. Yeah.
Well, and the digital log system in Europe has been a thing for like a much longer time. It just became a thing here in like 2017. So Europe is much more accustomed to that system. And I think that it literally will, like, it turns the vehicle off. Like you can't, you're a mile away from where you're trying to go. Like, nope, you're stopped. Which can be problematic when you need like a professional driver that knows how to drive a tour bus or whatever to get you the rest of the way there.
Oh yeah.
All right. So total bus costs, you've got then trucking. What's Mate's cartage?
So that was a company called Mates. That basically we rented something from them. I don't even know what it was, to be completely honest with you. But we rented something from a company. I don't know if that was in the state. Off the top of my head, I don't remember if it was in the States or in the UK or what. But it was just a rental.
Mm-hmm. Van, gas, hotels, airfare. So everybody on the tour needs to get to the first show and get home from the last show. That's
pretty much
that.
It's not cheap.
Yeah. At last check, I was estimating $400 per flight, I think. that was kind of like an average of.
Are we talking round trip?
No, like each way, just to have it covered, like an estimate to have.
Oh yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, I can see that.
Okay, sound, lights, backdrop.
I even wrote overestimate this.
Oh,
I'm pointing at it like once again, like you guys can see me pointing at the spot. Yeah, I even wrote overestimate just because. It's better to overestimate than to underestimate, and then they're pissed off at you.
totally. Like, you know what? It's always better to be like, look how much money I saved you.
There's nothing better than the look. Well, it depends on who you're working for, but I have one person in my brain. There's nothing better to me than at the end of a tour, handing them the extra whatever that I didn't spend in an envelope, and the number is just small in the corner. And I go, here you go. And they're like, what's this? I go, just look at it. And then they're like, oh, it's like Christmas. Love that shit.
Yeah, and I mean, so a lot of, tour managing is in the presentation to people of information and how you position it and how you kind of explain it and present it. And a lot of that is communication and relationships. And I can tell you put some thought into that. I think that's important. For sure.
I'll take a page out of Lisa's book right now. Kind of like, if you're the person that should have all the answers, and if you don't, you better fucking fake it until you make it, man. Because depending on who you work for, you could say, I'll work on that and whatnot. I don't know that answer in your head. I don't know that answer. All right, I'm going to work on it right now, and I'll have an answer for you very shortly. You can't ever just say, I don't fucking know.
I don't know should never be the answer. I'll figure it out, or I'll find out, or that's the version of I don't know that's acceptable.
Yeah, it's kind of you can figure it out. Give me a minute, I'll work on it. Is
Let
always
me get back to you on that.
I just got to make a phone call.
As a talent buyer, when I was settling shows and had to explain things to tour accountants who wanted very detailed explanations, I'll get back to you and let me go check. Let me find out. I'll be right back. Because certainly the way that I found to say, I don't know. And sometimes I'm not even sure what you're asking me, but I know that I can find out what it is. I know who I can go ask about this to get the appropriate answer.
I got to do one show during this pandemic that wasn't serious yet in the world, but it was happening. It was rolling out. And I got a lot of, hey, can we get this? And we were not in the USA. And I was like, give me a minute. Because I just ran around trying to talk to people who barely spoke English. And it was the time. But that's what it is. That's what the job is.
Yeah. All right. So backline rental. So backline can mean a couple of different things. It's the stuff that goes, the instruments, right?
Yeah.
And then it's also, if you're backlining something, it's setting all that stuff up on the stage appropriately. Is that correct?
Pretty much. You are correct.
I never work with backlines.
Yeah, I mean, it's essentially just equipment rental. That's what it is. It's equipment rental, and it's the equipment they're going to be using on stage every single night. That's basically what it is.
There's some rehearsal costs, credentials. Talk a little about what credentials are.
So what I always do is I check on how busy the artist will allow their backstage to be, and that'll determine how many and what kind of credentials that I need. Because of course, every artist on the tour will get a credential of some kind, but past that, maybe they want to give support acts a different laminate to allow them or not allow them to do certain things. On top of that, certain crew members will not be allowed to do certain things. I referenced that that tour I was on with Logic in some arenas. Their security guard was very, very overbearing, and even though I was with an artist that was direct support, he wouldn't let us anywhere near specific dressing rooms until the person that was the reason every person in that room was in the room came and come see us. Like if he wanted to hang out with us or say hello or whatever, then he mellowed out and things like that. But that's exactly what it is. I didn't have the right credential to be where in my brain, I'm like, I'm not going to do anything. I'm here to work. But that's not the point. They're keeping you away just in case, because they don't know you for the most part. So it depends on what the artist wants, on how many kind of credentials you're going to get and what kind of credentials the bands, artists, crew members, security, etc., are going to allow them to have.
So for the people that are typically on the entire tour, we will get some sort of like laminated pass.
Yes.
That's the thing that we're talking about. And if it's a one-day thing, we'll have some sort of sticky pass, like a satin. It's like a sticker. And they'll usually be all access. Another situation where I see a restricted area thing is stage access only, where only certain people are allowed up on the stage, even if they have all access to the rest of the venues. You might see VIP passes or working passes for people that are stagehands that are just working on a certain day. There might be press passes for people that are coming back to do interviews, photo passes for people that are allowed in the photo pit for the first 3 songs, or whatever the restrictions are. So the artist is really going to be guiding those decisions. And then the credentials are usually purchased from, you can make them and get a laminator and make them, or you can buy them from, like, there's companies that like make credentials.
I recently, and I might have been on this one, I don't remember off the top of my head, I recently started, not for everybody, I started using wristbands for specific credentials, not, and I'm talking more along guest list, press, things like that, photos, like you said, wristbands instead of the stickies, because we saved a lot of money that way. And we had 8 different colors. I think it was 8, and we would rotate them throughout the different days of the week. And so if we were in the Northeast for a week, somebody who had a green photo pass from can't go and use the same one in Boston because it's pretty close by. Can't just use that and then assume that they're gonna shoot at the next show, because we changed the color, we changed the date. I would write on every one of them, or whatever the situation is. Yeah.
Yep, we used wristbands for Warped Tour, and we always had a wide variety of them, and you want to change them up and have an inconsistent pattern or routine. Sticky passes, a lot of times there will be like a code that gets put on there in addition to the date, something that is really kind of custom inside knowledge. All of this then gets put on what we call a pass sheet, which is an 8x10 photocopy of all of these credentials that then the security guards that are posted at each station can then reference to see, oh, can this person come past me or not?
And if they don't reference them, you better get on them quick, because I've run into that problem more times than I can remember.
I will tell you, every once in a while, I will see a touring crew person complaining at the security person, like, why are you asking me for my pass? I'm on the tour. No, that's a local person that has no idea who you are, and they are doing their job by making you show your pass. So you should have it somewhere that is like visible, or and make the effort to like flash it to them if it's not super visible, because they are doing their job, making sure that the venue is safe, the patrons are safe, the artist is safe, they're doing what they're supposed to be doing. And on the flip side, if they're not asking, I will go find whoever is in charge and be like, that person's not doing the thing.
Yeah. Oh, if they don't ask me, actually.
Yeah.
Yeah. I kind of felt bad afterwards, but I almost don't at the same time. I was at the Worcester Palladium once, and from what I was told, because I was good friends with the like day of show contact person, she's been the same person there forever. She told me that they fired this person after I told them what was happening. My photographer got a picture of one of the security guards in the front of the stage catching crowd surfers on his phone. Just and I'm not saying like quick, oh shit, put it back. My band members told me later on, there was a guy just literally just texting away throughout the set, and I fucking lost it.
Not safe. It's not
Yeah,
safe.
I lost, but that's besides the point. Yes, a lot of credentials. I never even thought about doing the wristbands in a small, not a club, like a small club tour, but I just never thought of it. And then it saved us a bunch of money on one. So now I kind of always present that to different artists that I work for. So if they want to save money that way, they can. Sometimes they like that their guest list is getting a nice sticky pass, and it makes them feel good. So sometimes they just do that instead.
And on the a lot of times you'll have people that show up and are like, oh, I don't want the sticky pass. I want like the fancy real limit, so that everybody can see that I'm important enough to get that, right? And that it shouldn't matter, but it matters to some people sometimes. All right, tour supplies, itineraries, which we also sometimes call tour books, which we talked about before. There's usually an overview of the tour in it, and then a page for each day that says where you're at, what's the address, what's the phone number, what's the hotel, what's all of who's your production contact, and everything for the day. Freight, when you have to ship your stuff to the beginning or the home from the end. Radio rentals. So
I kept that blank for this tour because I have radios for that whole crew. But I do have a select number of radio contacts that I do use if it's a crew that doesn't own their own radios. Just that specific tour, we have all our own, so we didn't have to.
nice.
For that, I'm going to say it's probably somewhere, if it's a month-long tour, somewhere between $500 and $700 is probably where that's ranging. Well, actually, it also depends on how many you need. So
Right.
if we're going with a 6 or 7 person crew, does everybody need one, or can you manage with 5? It all just factors in. Somewhere between $500 and $700 probably for a month-long tour.
So people in other industries might be more familiar with the term walkie-talkie, but we call them radios. So that's the type of thing that we are talking about. It's worth noting that a replacement is, I believe we charge people like $600. Don't lose your radio. Label your radio.
Jeez. My radio says dad on it, actually.
Aw. Mine always said Jen. But people put their nicknames and all kinds of stuff. But I'll tell you what, I leave the radio in the bathroom all the time because, you gotta, girls, we gotta take stuff off to whatever. And so I can't tell you how many times I was just like, oh, I left my radio in the bathroom again. And that first day of tour before, I literally got to the point where I am handed that radio. I'm not doing a thing with it until I label it because they all look the same. Until you have put
get a labeler for sure. Not you, just anybody who's listening. Get
a P-Touch labeler.
Yeah, they're very helpful. It's one of those things where it's like, why the hell do I need this? And then once you get it, you're like, I can label everything.
Yeah, and it really steps your tour manager game up. It makes you look fancy and detail oriented, and it's like people that hang up signs around the venue. So at venues, the tour manager or somebody has to hang up signs that say where things are, because when you go to an airport, there's signs that tell you how to get everywhere. Concert venues, not so much, and things are in different places for each tour that comes through. So there'll be signs to how to get to the stage, how to get to the dressing room, how to get to catering, how to get to the buses. And the people that put the tape on the back so you can't see it and make sure that the sign is hung level, that's good attention to detail.
I'm not that tall, so.
You don't have to be tall to hang something, but when somebody just slaps it up sideways, you're just like, that person doesn't care about, they're not taking pride in their job. It's one of those funny little things that you notice, when you've seen a variety of people hanging up signs. I don't know, it always sticks with me. Ubers, car services, insurance. Do you deal with insurance much?
No.
Or is that above your pay grade?
Not me. I don't want to mess anything up. So I'll let business team handle that.
Office, FedEx, excess baggage. So, my personal viewpoint is, it used to be when you bought a plane ticket, you could bring bags with you. And now that's not the case. But I know that when people are flying to a tour, they're going to have a large suitcase. And then a lot of times they're going to have some sort of like work Pelican. You know, when I was going to the Warped Tour, I would have like a large suitcase that was like my personal stuff. And then I would have my concert suitcase, is what my children called it. You know, a Pelican that had like my printer and the money counter and my paperwork and stuff in it. So I had like 2 large bags, and it is my opinion that that should be covered by the tour.
It is. Absolutely. At least I just agree with you. Whether it is or isn't for whoever you're working for, that's a different story. But I will always put that into the budget, at least for me. If
Oh yeah, if you want me to bring my office supplies, then that is
at least for me, and that goes for anybody who does sound or anything like that. A photographer with a whole bunch of extra pieces for their cameras and etc. Like all that stuff is, you're hired. That's your work. Those are your work pieces. That's what you need to do your job that you're hired for that artist. You better be paying for that to get there. Because if it doesn't get there, the job is not done.
And then you've got a 5% contingency. Somewhere between 5 and 10%, we said, is a good number. So I think that is probably based on experience and.
That's when shit goes wrong. That's that money.
Yeah.
So if shit doesn't go wrong and that number comes dramatically down, the artist is making more money at the end of the day, and they're happy.
Somebody asked, what's Carnet? How do we use that?
The Carnet?
Where? Yeah, maybe. Is it French? Where was that? Because I also was like, what is that? And I didn't.
The Carnet is basically, how do I explain it? It's basically a list of everything that you're bringing over to a different area, to a different part of the world. It's
like a manifest.
Yeah. Unless I'm just wrong. But
is it a French word?
I don't know.
Does anybody out there know what Carnet is?
Yeah, it's manifest. Yeah, okay. I'm not wrong. Yeah, it's just a different word for that. Yeah. Tomato.
Cool. All right. We're all learning something here today.
Yeah, I haven't had to think about any of this stuff in literally maybe 6 months. So when you ask me about tour budget, I'm like, maybe.
And then you've got some other commissions on there, and then of course calculate your. So I think that this is an interesting thing to point out. So I just want to scroll back up to the top, and I don't know if you deleted any information off of this or number wise, but you've got guarantees coming in of over $200,000, and you've got a net profit of under $20,000.
Isn't it crazy how that works?
Crazy.
It's crazy, right?
That's where you can really see that like expenses really can add up.
And what's funny is, yes, some of this is overestimate on purpose, because you never, like I said before, you never want to just assume that it's going to cost the absolute bare minimum of something. Mm-hmm. But this is what that specific artist wants, and this is what we all agreed to. So we know that they're going to be happy at the end of the day. And if that's the money that's coming through, then that's the money that's coming through, unless you want to alter whatever it is that you're already agreeing upon. That's just the name of the game.
So I think it's also important to acknowledge that artists do tour to make money, but there can be some other and we're not going to get into all the nuances of this, but some other reasons for artists to be out on tour, which is potentially leading to the next tour, building a fan base, growing. And so while this might not look like a sustainable like life income perhaps for, because then you divide that amongst 4 or 5 people, that's really not a lot of money for however long this tour was. But there could be some career choices that are making this a good move, even if it's not a huge payday.
Yeah, this is I can't go into detail about it, but this isn't bad for what we did. It's not bad. It may look like it's bad, but it's not bad.
I had a thought. I'm not going to go there with it. All right. So we have, I want to, it was going to be a longer story that kind of got off on a tangent. Okay. So we have some Q&As come in. And so we'll talk about them. Let's see.
I saw one of them. I didn't see the other three. You tell me and I'll go. You can be the host here.
Okay, so Marcus says, Frank, thanks. Your charity is awesome. I donated. Thanks for doing that. Second, can you talk about how you started doing smaller club dates, DIY, when you basically did everything? How did you manage expenses and income on the road?
I barely did. To be completely honest with you, I barely did. It was so DIY that we knew we'd make. Like I had whether it was a spreadsheet or just a notepad or whatever the hell I did back then. I was probably using it all on my, what are they called? My Sidekick phone. That's how long ago this was. I was probably doing it all on there. It's basically just, here's what came in. Here's what it's essentially a spreadsheet, just not in a spreadsheet. Here's what came in for the night. This is what we did in merch. This guarantee was, whether it was $200 or $500 or whatever the hell. But some of the band, like when I first started tour managing and shit, some people just didn't care. Yeah, we had some receipts for gas or whatever. We just kind of all just shove it in the main money holder. It was a really bad way of doing things. Very awful, absolutely awful. And I know that, but he's actually turned it into a career. But back then, it's like nobody cared. It was just like, holy shit, we're on tour. We're playing for 80 kids, and this is cool. Like, it just didn't matter. So over time, you learn that is a terrible mistake. But also a lot of the bands that you work for in a major DIY setting are on their own. So they dictate how they want to do their business. If they want to give everybody $10 a day to eat, and there was a time in my life where I was like, oh my God, you're giving me an extra $10? Like, that's incredible. If that's how they want to do it, and then they just take the lump sum of whatever it is that they got, they count it once, and then they just shove it all in there, and they have a general idea of where they're at in their head, and then they just chip away with gas and whatnot, and then the next day you get another $10 and things like that. They just kind of flow with it. So over time, when you get with a different artist, or you're growing and you're becoming a part of a different crew and a bigger crew, then that's just like we've been referencing back to, that's when the business team gets involved or the manager gets involved. But this is what we want. And I go, okay. And then you have to learn that whole situation again. And the sheet that you're looking at is from a very early on part of my career where I never had to change it up too much, because if I need to put all the information in this thing, it covers it. Most of the time I don't have to fill up the whole sheet or whatever, but it depends on who you're working for and what they want out of you. For many years, I sang in a band, and I would book the tours and things like that, to where we didn't give a shit. We knew what we made. We write it down in our merch book, literally like one of the black and white books. I'd write it down. This is what we did in Seattle. $500 of merch this night. This is what our guarantee was. $200 for 8 people in the crowd or whatever it was. Did we get catering? No, or did we get a buyout? No, we got 3 hot and ready pizzas, like things like that. We just didn't care enough to put it all on paper. So we just didn't care. That's as much as I can get to it. But the more you work, the more you work for bigger acts, then you have to learn to use things like this and to appease what they're doing for real, respectful, and obvious reasons.
So it is my advice on everything that you should keep things as simple as you can. So there is some amount of like, don't make a huge, big, complicated spreadsheet when you just have 5 things you need to write down in a composition notebook, right? So keep it as simple and only make it as complicated as it needs to be. But I think that there's kind of a bigger life thing that, everybody chooses to live different ways, right? And I think especially right now in our world, where people are maybe taking a look at their financial stability and thinking more about their like own personal, but also their business finances and planning for the future. And, when you say like, you just didn't care, like some people are just like, we're going to go out on the road. We're going to live for today. We're going to go do it. right? And I think that it is wise advice in any situation to have a well thought out plan. And the bottom line is going to have to be part of that. You can only stay out on the road as long as you can afford it. So making sure that you have looked into the future enough to account for things like those contingencies. So budgeting for if something goes wrong, so it's a less fly by the seat of your pants. I think it would be wise advice for anybody undertaking any sort of tour.
Yeah, I think when I actually started having to pay attention to that kind of thing, I think the most simple thing I did was like literally just buy a pack of 100 envelopes or whatever, and then I would just put everything made that day in one envelope, and then I would write on it. Like that was the simple way of starting to be organized. Of starting, like I didn't know how to do a spreadsheet or whatever. If I was doing merch, I would literally write every shirt down in a black notebook, and then I would put the size, and then I would do the tally system, things like that. And over time, it's just people want different things. But that's when I started. I think my first form of organization was literally writing the city name on an envelope and then shoving all the money and the receipts in there, which is essentially what we do, but just in a more organized fashion now.
Well, the best organizational system for anyone is the one that they will actually use. So if that's what you used and what worked for your situation, it's perfect, right?
Yeah, there's actually no wrong way to. I shouldn't say that.
There's better and worse ways to do
yes, I guess there's no wrong, like completely wrong way, other than just you're not doing the finances right. I don't know, you're not counting right, whatever. But yeah, it just like you said, whatever makes you feel more comfortable and the job gets done correctly, then I mean, I can't fault you. Maybe it's just the longer way or things like that. But that's to each their own.
Okay, so let's see. Do you have any clauses to cover double drivers in your contracts, both the driver, truck, or livery transportation contracts, as well as the general tour or venue contracts? I'm gonna guess that this is gonna be a better question for our guest on Thursday, who tour accounts larger things that have, but you might, I don't know, do you have an answer?
I'm reading. No, I mean, that's something that is something that I would send to my business team, to be honest with you.
Yeah,
because they're gonna work on the contracts. Yeah.
right.
Yeah.
Okay, so I will try to remember to ask that. And if anonymous, if you would like to ask that again on Thursday with our guest, then feel free.
To give you an example, I actually I had it might have been on this specific tour. We had to get 2 buses for some reason. I forget what the reason is. I think it's because we had to fly out in the middle of the tour to go do a thing overseas and then come back. And for some reason, we just couldn't keep the same bus for the whole tour. One of whatever bus they gave us on either the first or the second leg wasn't the bus that we agreed to in our emails contractually. So then I just sent it over to the business team. I was like, I'm telling you what I have. You're going to have to deal with it because this is what you guys signed off on. This is what we agreed to, da, 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 da. So yeah, that's a business team. And that's that question.
I just realized that I didn't need to be screen sharing anymore. So I stopped that. Okay. So we've got, and I'm not sure about this one. Has anyone used media passes or press passes to cut down on luggage costs for air travel since it allows for more bags and greater weight? Do you know about that?
Where are we using these press passes? At the airport? Am I reading that correctly? Is that what you mean?
I'm not entirely certain what the question is. I feel like maybe like I'm not getting it all. So apologies on that. Okay, I'm gonna pop. Oh, there's a media rate apparently.
Interesting.
Lisa has been super helpful. Thank you, Lisa. Lisa says, yes, media rate. It's very hard to get media rate, but yes, that's possible. Okay, so just glancing through the chat, which I think everybody can see. So we already talked about current. We talked about Oh, great. So there's some great answers in the chat. Sorry, it's hard to see like the Q&A and the chat and the spreadsheet and talk to Frank all at the same
Yeah,
time.
this is the first time I'm seeing the chat in a little while now, actually.
So international shipping is specifically what that carnet is. Yes, it's a French word. Thank you. Learning so much.
I never, I don't,
Okay.
I haven't been overseas though.
Different responsibilities for a production manager. I know how I would answer, how I explain this to people. How do you explain production manager versus tour manager to people?
I've done, I've been all of that all at the same time. So I put it into the same, almost the same thing,
So,
but you're not supposed to if you have the budget.
There's 3 roles, and if anybody wants to go back and watch my How an Idea Becomes a Tour, the very first workshop that I did, there's 3 roles that what Frank does. Typically, we would call tour manager. It encompasses all 3 of those. So there's tour manager, production manager, and tour accountant. And usually, if one person's doing all of that, we call that person the tour manager. Once artists have the budget and shows get bigger, jobs become more specialized and you have more people. So then the tour accountant does just what it sounds like. And at that point, if you have a tour manager and a production manager also, the tour manager is going to take care of the artist and getting them from place to place. And the production manager is going to take care of the crew and the gear and getting the gear and the crew from place to place. And then those 2 people would travel with those separate parties.
So my last time that I was doing any production manager work, like with something like with an actual stage show or stage setup or whatever, I was tour managing Yellow Wolf, and Jen and I talked about this a couple of weeks ago. We didn't get into this specific detail, but I was tour managing and production manager because I had to set up the DJ rig every single day. For the DJ who didn't want to be at soundcheck every day because he was a big partier and he just wouldn't be at every one. So I would be that guy. And on top of that, the whole DJ rig was essentially the front end of a box Chevy truck.
Made by my Johnny.
Yes.
Which somebody, a Bus 3 Warped Tour mate of mine whose name was my Johnny as a nickname.
Yes.
My Johnny.
I totally forgot about that. Yes, he did make it. But yes, we had the front end of a box Chevy truck. So we had to correctly place it every single day. And it's extremely heavy. Not one person, not 2, not 3. You can probably get away with 3, but definitely want at least 4 to 5 people on that thing at all times. And there were certain times where this goes back to budgets, where we would have to get a lift of some sort, some kind of lift to get in there and a forklift or whatever to get it up on stage because sometimes it's just too high or whatever the situation is. But I would set up the DJ rig every day, and then also if I had to get involved because we were short on hand, because not every venue is going to provide you exactly what you want every day, unfortunately. That was my production for that tour. That's how I would have to set it up. And then I also played stage manager on that tour because it was a rap tour. And a lot of the times they don't give a shit about what the schedule is. So that's that specific tour. I had to set up the box Chevy truck every single day. And it's just basically the added stuff that's on the stage that is going along with just the equipment, because the equipment's handled by the techs and whatnot of the specific artists. But that's my estimation of the situation. Just all the added stuff.
So as we're wrapping up here, I want to let people know next week I'm going to start a new style of workshop that is going to happen every couple of weeks, and it's going to be called Office Hours. And it's actually going to feel kind of a lot like this, where it's like hanging out and chatting a little bit more than a structured lecture. And so what I want is I'm going to have some industry professionals come on as panelists, and then attendees can submit to come on, and it'll be kind of a mentoring hour. So people could come on and pick our brains about stuff. And Lisa Brownlee, who has chimed in several times on this, is going to be on in addition to a couple of other people. So if you are interested in coming on either as a mentor or a mentee, go to my website, jenkellogg.com, and just fill out a little bit form. Fill out a form so that I get some information about you. I want to have as many people on as I can. I can't promise that I can get everybody on. Is this similar to the video office hours? I don't know if I'm familiar with that. But my vibe of this is going to be kind of hanging out in the production office, mentoring hours. So I'm intending to do that kind of once every 2 weeks in addition to the other stuff we're doing. So is the email we provide on the Google Doc have to be the email that corresponds with our Zoom account? No, I don't think that the email has to be the same. So if I am able to bring you on, I'm going to make sure that you're going to be available and live on the Zoom. And at that point you can tell me this is my Zoom name or whatever it is. So hopefully some people are interested in that. I think it's going to be a fun time. And Frank, I just want to super thank you for all of your time today. This has been really like helpful and informative and fun. And thank you so much.
It's always fun to do these things. Jen is the, yeah, no, it was you. Yeah, Jen's the first one who allowed me to do this kind of thing a few years ago. And I've very much enjoyed it every time that I've done it. I've even flown out to do one, which was cool, that you've gotten me a part of, and hopefully I can do some more in the future. So anybody who has any questions outside of this, I'm going to, once again, you know where I'm going with this because it's relevant to what we're doing. You can hit me up at forthenomads.org. That's the fundraiser that we're talking about earlier in the program. If anybody does tour here for a living and needs help, and you're not just, trying to get money wherever you can, if you actually need help, please hit us up. We're going to try to help you out as long as you have the proof of your tours that were lost or the proof that you are a touring professional. That's all on forthenomads.org. So if you have any questions, hit me up there or on any of the socials. It's all For the Nomads. And Jen, thank you for having me.
Yeah, everybody, For the Nomads, go make it happen. And thank you so much.
The auction is ridiculous right now. So
go check it out.
Yeah, if you don't want to bid or whatever, if you work some artists that want to get on board, hit us up. That too. Jen, thank you for having me once again.
All right. Thanks, Frank.
Bye, everybody.